I am Turok.
Did you know? The Turok franchise actually started in 1956. The series got its start as a comic book, with the original storyline centered on a pair of Native American brothers named Turok and Andar, who become trapped in a mysterious valley inhabited by dinosaurs. The initial run of comics lasted until 1982, but the series was revived a decade later by Valiant Comics in a story that introduced the Lost Lands setting, which was popularized by the Turok video games. Following the purchase of Valiant Comics by Acclaim, another reboot of the comic was published in 1998. It developed the story to be more in line with the video game series and changed Turok from the main character's name to a title meaning Son of Stone. As a longtime developer for Nintendo platforms, Acclaim was approached by Nintendo to make a game exclusively for the N64 before the console's release. The project was given to a relatively inexperienced team at Iguana Entertainment led by first-time lead designer David Dienstbier. When they started out, the Turok team had few resources, but interest in the game skyrocketed after a successful demonstration at E3 1996. In an interview with Edge magazine, Dienstbier recalled, "We were having a real hard time getting dev kits from Nintendo, and we only had 2 of those really expensive CGI machines. All of the artists and designers were sharing one, and our lead programmer had one in his office so he could write the game engine and test it. After that E3 demo, development systems suddenly started turning up. It was great." Internally, there were concerns about the game's graphic violence and blood, as Nintendo is known for family-friendly titles. However, the team was never once asked to submit content for approval, and developed Turok without interference from Nintendo. While brainstorming the initial concept for Turok, the devs wanted to make something that showed off the power of the Nintendo 64. They also took note of the growing shooter genre of games on the PC and decided the game should be an FPS. Turok proved to be technologically groundbreaking. The scope of its world and the complexity of its animations were unlike anything seen in other console shooters. This was achieved in part due to Acclaim having spent $10 million to construct their own motion capture studio, used for several video game projects throughout the 90s. Their studio was even borrowed for some Hollywood pictures, including Batman Forever and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Motion capture allowed the Turok devs to overcome their limited resources and incorporate highly detailed character animations into the game. They gave generic enemies unique animations that changed depending on how they died. While this worked well for the humanoid enemies, the game's dinosaurs were a much greater challenge. The team tried using emus and ostriches as motion capture stand-ins, but this proved impractical. Still, Remington Scott, the then interactive director for Acclaim, maintains that having an emu as a reference improved the game's final dinosaur animations. Despite all the hype leading up to its release, Turok represented a risky venture for Acclaim. The company lost over $200 million in fiscal year 1996 and were forced to lay off 100 employees. The game's mature rating and the hefty $80 price tag caused some analysts to doubt the game's potential. In the end though, Turok overcame these drawbacks and was a massive hit, selling more than 1.7 million copies. The mayor of Glen Cove, New York, the city where Acclaim was based, even temporarily renamed a street Turok Boulevard in honor of the game's launch. Nintendo themselves recognized the game's success by featuring Turok as part of their Player's Choice line, the first third-party game to receive the honor. The game was successful enough that Sculptured Software, another studio owned by Acclaim, started testing the possibility of porting Turok to the PlayStation, though ultimately nothing came of it. Before Turok was even released, Acclaim announced pre-order sales for the game were so strong that they were already starting development on a sequel, tentatively titled Turok Dinosaur Hunter 2. The team at Iguana was careful to listen to fan feedback, who asked for improved controls and a multiplayer mode. Despite this, the multiplayer mode almost didn't make the cut. Turok 2 originally started development on a 12 MB cartridge that filled up quickly. Storage limitations, cartridge prices, and a tight development schedule made multiplayer near impossible to include. Fortunately, cartridge prices dropped and the team was able to move the project to a larger 16MB cartridge. As multiplayer modes and games grew to be a major incentive for players, Turok 2's development time was extended to allow for multiplayer to be included. One of the most common complaints from fans about the first Turok was its control scheme. According to Dienstbier, the plan for Turok 2 was to include two control schemes, one based on Turok and one more familiar to fans of GoldenEye. This can be seen quite literally in an early demo build of the game that offered two control setups named Turok and Golden. These were renamed to Expert and Arcade for the final release. Other differences in the demo included the presence of checkpoints, which were later removed, and a complete lack of blood. Players were also unable to climb down ladders in the demo and could damage themselves with their own weapons. Some elements of Turok 2 took inspiration from other sources. In an interview with IGN, Dienstbier confirmed the cerebral bore weapon was inspired by the iconic Sentinel spheres from the Phantasm horror movies. This isn't the only referential weapon in the franchise though. Dinosaur Hunter's fusion cannon is likely based on the BFG 9000 from Doom, which was a large inspiration for Turok's developers. And Turok Rage War's Chestburster is likely a nod to the Alien franchise. The title Chestburster is usually given to the second stage in a xenomorph's life cycle when it bursts out of the host's chest. Both Turok and its sequel were eventually remastered by Night Dive Studios and released on digital stores like Steam and GOG in 2015 and 2017 respectively, as well as on the Switch and Xbox later on. The Turok 2 remaster contains several unused levels in its data, though most of these were meant for testing purposes. One of the levels, named Not Dwango, is a recreation of a popular fan-made multiplayer map from Doom 2 known as Dwango. The name Dwango is an acronym for Dial-Up Wide Area Network Game Operation, an online gaming service from the mid-90s that became popular enough to use with the Doom games. The Not Dwango map was removed from Turok 2 with the release of a later update. As part of the same update, a level editor was added to the game. The Turok games have seen a few changes when released in different regions. Both Turok and Turok 2 were given different titles in Japan. Turok Dinosaur Hunter became Dimensional Warrior Turok, and Turok 2 Seeds of Evil became Violence Killer Turok New Generation. Meanwhile, the German version of Turok was censored in several ways. All the human enemies in the game were replaced with robots, and their sound effects were altered. The blood was also removed from the game's box art. Turok Rage Wars also had regional censorship. Oddly, 4 playable characters were changed in the German game. Adon, Campaigner, Bastille, and Syra were all altered. Adon was entirely replaced by a robot, which even overwrote her alternate skins, which became unchanging robots. Syra was also replaced with, you guessed it, a robot. Campaigner was altered to appear less human with a metal tone to his skin and red eyes, and Bastille was given a helmet with an opaque visor to cover his face. The original North American version of Turok Rage Wars featured a glitch that effectively rendered the game unbeatable. One of the modes in the game's 2-player co-op trials was Frag Tag. In this mode, one player's character is turned into an animal, forcing them to reach a special platform to change back while the opposing team can earn points for killing the animal player. At the end of the match, the team with the highest score wins. Due to the glitch, however, any frag tag level played in co-op would result in a failure for the players, regardless of how many points they'd earned. This made the 2-player trials mode impossible to complete. The bug was fixed in later North American builds, and this glitch never affected other regions. For North American players stuck with a defective copy, Acclaim offered to send a replacement cartridge. This offer wasn't advertised in any way, however. Players could only take advantage of it by emailing Acclaim, where they'd be instructed to mail their copy in to receive a replacement. The game was originally released on black N64 cartridges, but the replacement cartridges were the simple gray. Because of how relatively unknown the replacement offer was, gray cartridges of Turok Rage Wars have gone on to become valuable collector's items. Another rare and extremely unique piece of Turok history was sold online. In January of 2017, 2017, YouTube channel Silicon Classics uploaded a video about a collection of CGI indie workstations they acquired that once belonged to Acclaim before their bankruptcy. While documenting the contents of the computers, one of them was found to contain the complete source code for Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Rather than dumping the code online, which would have led to legal ramifications, Silicon Classics put the computer up for sale on eBay. About a year later, a Reddit user going by the name of Code Ouroboros made a post claiming to have found the source code on a file sharing site. But there was a catch. Whoever uploaded it had also encrypted the code with a series of passwords and provided a set of riddles as clues. According to updates on the Reddit post, the first two passwords were Pandora's Box and Trojan Horse, but the third and final riddle seemed to stump them, with no further updates from Code Ouroboros. However, in August 2018, the game's source code surfaced online, allowing anyone to access the complete library of character models, sound effects, music, and other assets from Turok. The Turok franchise continued to evolve after the N64's lifecycle. The first next-gen Turok game was Turok Evolution, which Acclaim advertised aggressively. The company announced they were offering $10,000 in US savings bonds to any parents who named their newborn child after the titular hero in the game. The child had to be named Turok for at least a year, had to be born around August or early September 2002, and an official birth certificate had to be presented to Acclaim as proof. This stunt followed a previous campaign where Acclaim offered £500, roughly $766 at the time, and an Xbox to any Brits who'd legally changed their name to Turok. The British marketing stunt had thousands of responses, and we can only pray that the Name Your Child Turok stunt had none. Did you also know that there were dozens of animals and other cut creatures from Turok Evolution, or that there's a rumor that Acclaim accidentally manufactured the wrong version of the game? For more on the train wreck that was Turok Evolution's development cycle, check out my video on the Dinosaur Hunter, Turok Evolution. What happened?